just waiting another minute or two for people to log on. We're going to start presently. Amy, do we have Marianne and Greg on the line?
I see Greg in here. He should be coming up to a panelist in a second. I'm not seeing Marianne yet, right?
Yeah, I think Greg should be on the panel now.
Okay, I see Greg.
I just sent board member Sproggins the link again, so we'll, if we get just 1 second.
Okay.
I just saw her pop up.
Okay, yeah.
Good. All right, so let's get started. Good morning and welcome to the 2021 post-election hearing of the New York City Campaign Finance Board. Before we get started with the hearing, we have some board business to conduct. Last month, the board deferred action on the matter of the Francisco Moya campaign from 2017. The campaign brought new documents to that meeting, and the board decided to consider those documents despite their lateness. That review has now been completed, and the board will vote on that matter at this time. The board proposes to find the following violations and impose the following penalties as well as repayment obligations. 1, failing to report transactions in daily pre-election disclosure statements, $250. 2, failing to document transactions, $508. 3, accepting a contribution from a limited liability company, $1,962. 4, failing to demonstrate that spending was in furtherance of the campaign, no violation. 5, making impermissible post-election expenditures, $222. 6, exceeding the expenditure limit, $35,000. 7, filing a late response to the draft audit report, $2,002, for total recommended penalties of $39,944. In addition, there is a public funds repayment obligation of $3,916.33 for total penalties and repayments of $43,860.33. I move that we approve those findings and the imposition of those penalties and repayment obligations. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you. So now to the post-election hearing. The board is very happy that we will get to hear from candidates, their campaign staff, civic and community organizations, and New Yorkers today. The campaign finance program and the work of the campaign finance board was spotlighted in the 2021 elections like never before in our 30-plus year history. The campaign finance program expanded significantly to allow an 8-to-1 match and to make it easier for candidates to qualify for public financing. We also experienced very high interest in running for office. These two factors combined for a record-setting election cycle for the board, as evidenced by these statistics. 447 candidates registered with the CFB. 69% of those candidates qualified for and received public funds. The board paid a record $126,826,026. The previous high water mark for public funds payments was in 2001, when candidates received $41 million. The program has had significant impact on who will be taking office because of the 2021 elections. Starting January 1st, the City Council will be much more diverse than ever before. We hope to hear more from the Brennan Center about their excellent report on this topic later in this hearing. At a more fundamental level, matching funds helped almost every one of the winning candidates in the 2021 elections. Of the 59 incoming city elected officials whose offices are covered by the city's Campaign Finance Act, only 2 did not participate in the matching funds program, and only 3 did not receive public funds payments. Today's hearing is the board's opportunity to learn from the people who are most affected by this program and to hear your ideas for making it better. The program changed significantly in 2021, and we believe for the better, but we know there are always ways to improve. To that end, the information we gather here today will help inform the research and legislative recommendations that CFB staff will include in our post-election report due in August 2022. Now I will turn it over to Executive Director Amy Loprest to start the proceedings.
Good morning, Chair Schaefer. I was muted, sorry. My name is Amy Loprest. I'm the Executive Director of the Campaign Finance Board. I am a white middle-aged woman who is bald but wearing a black headscarf, a purple dress, and a pink and purple scarf. We will now hear from speakers who have RSVP'd to testify. If you did not RSVP to speak but wish to do so, please use the raise hand function or put a comment into the chat box. CFB staff will take note of your name and add you to the speakers list. CFB staff will also be answering questions in the chat. We are also streaming this hearing on Facebook, and CFB staff will be answering questions there as well. Here are some ground rules for speaking during the hearing. We will be announcing speakers 3 at a time. Once your name has been called, CFB staff will promote you to be a panelist in the webinar. Please accept that request. You will then be able to unmute and turn on your camera and begin speaking. Each person will be given up to 2 minutes to speak. A CFB staffer will notify you when the 2 minutes is up. We ask everyone to stay respectful and civil. We ask all speakers to state their names and affiliations if they have any. If you were a candidate or part of a campaign, please tell us which one. We are providing Asl Interpretation, so you'll be seeing the interpreters alongside the speakers. We are also asking everyone to provide an audio description of themselves, as I did at the beginning of the hearing. These descriptions provide greater accessibility to New Yorkers who are blind or have low vision. With that, let's get started. The first three speakers are Helen Helmuth, Theo Chino, Cesar Ruiz. So Ms. Helmuth, if you, once our staff promotes you to be speaker, you can turn on your camera and your microphone and begin speaking.
I'm just going to add, as that happens, that I will be the enforcer of the time limitation, and I intend to do so rigorously. If you run over the time, I will give you a warning that in 10 seconds you will be cut off and the next speaker will be permitted to proceed. Our intent is not to be impolite to anyone, but we need to enforce the time limitation if we're going to give everyone an opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would actually respectfully request to jump to third. I'm trying to find my testimony, and I apologize greatly for that.
Oh, no problem, Ms. Helmuth. That is completely fine. So we will take the next speaker, who is Theo Chino. Mr. Chino, once you've been promoted to panelist, can you turn on your camera and begin speaking?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me. I am a male, Latino, dark color skin with curly hair, and a t-shirt today. I am Theo Chino. I was a candidate for public advocate since the special election. I was the treasurer of Canfor City Council. I was also the consultant for the Dr. Devi Numpayampil campaign when it comes to getting into the debate for public advocate. Having learned from all the experience, I have to say something very clear to the board. The board needs to stop self-congratulating themselves for the $126 million spent in a campaign that has only served to promote those that can afford the staff and the understanding of a very difficult rule that the CFB put together. At the end of the day, those rules makes the system much more less democratic and is not what it was intended by the New York citizen when they set up the CFB. This system needs to be reworked from the bottom up. The staff, and everybody there are very professional, but the rule makes the system so hard and so undemocratic. I'm going to put in a writing testimony. It's already 8 pages long, of everything that is needed to be fixed to get the system really and truly democratic, so every candidate really has a voice to present to the voter. For example, one important item is the voter guide. The problem is many voter guide candidates were denied certain items to be put on the voter guide. So the voter guide needs to be changed where the candidate is allowed to put one page free from any word, where you can cut off. The CFB basically check proof the wording in the voter guide for the candidate. Those are the problem that doesn't allow the public debate to happen in written form.
Mr.
The
Chair,
other
you're
part-
just over 2 minutes. If you could wrap up, that would
Okay.
be great. Thank you very
I'll
much.
wrap it up. The
Thank
only
you.
thing I will say, look up for my testimony in writing and think about where $126 million went, because it was not spent for leveling up the voice of the candidate. It only allowed the incumbent to get more money from the system. Look at the Seattle's voucher program, look at other system, and I'll discuss that in a piece of paper. Thank you very much for your time. And hopefully next cycle, we will see a much democratic system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chino. Do any of the board members have questions or comments for Mr. Chino?
I just want to assure all of the speakers that your written submissions will be considered carefully, and thank you for them, and thank you, Mr. Chino.
Thank you, Mr. Chino.
Thank you.
Mr. Ruiz?
Mr. Ruiz isn't here yet, so maybe
Okay.
we see if Ms.
Okay.
Homoth is ready.
It looks like she is.
Great.
Okay, so why don't you start, Miss? And I will just say that after Ms. Helmuth, we will have June Moses, Dave Manny, and Hillary Weissman, and then Tashia Librors. I'm apologize in advance if I have mispronounced your name.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Helen Helmuth, and I'm a senior advocate at Disability Rights New York. I'm a white female in my late 20s with fairly large black glasses and a blue t-shirt that says DRNY. DRNY is the protection and advocacy system for New York State, and we work to protect the rights of New Yorkers with disabilities by enabling them to determine their own lives and fully participate in their communities. Full and robust civic engagement by all New Yorkers, including those with disabilities, is paramount to our democracy. DRNY encourages voter engagement among New Yorkers with disabilities during every election because voters with disabilities are the largest minority voting bloc and come from all racial, cultural, and socioeconomic backgrounds. So the first thing I'm going to touch on quickly is improvements to New York City's voter education and empowerment. DRNY commends the New York City Campaign Finance Board's approach to accessibility. They took significant steps forward in 2021 to make its programs and publications as accessible as possible to the disability community. Notably, the Campaign Finance Board included information about accessibility features of New York City's voting programs in its November 2021 General Election Voter Guide, which can be found online. DRNY makes the following recommendations to enhance the accessibility section of every voter guide. Add information about physical accessibility of polling locations in its future voter guides. For example, adding information that explains a voter's right to a polling location that is barrier-free and meets minimum accessibility standards. And 2, including information about how a voter can report barriers at their polling location in the accessibility section of the voter guide and online. At minimum, the following contact should be provided: New York City 311, Disability Rights New York, and the New York State Attorney General's election hotline. The next thing I'm going to touch on quickly is improvements to the Campaign Finance Board's programs and debates. So the CFB mandated several New York City mayoral candidate debates ahead of the 2021 primaries. The first debate, which was on May 13th, was inaccessible for people who needed ASL interpretation or closed captioning. However, DRNY worked with the Campaign Finance Board and Charter Communications to add the recorded debate, ASL and closed captioning in English. The Campaign Finance Board and DRNY made this video available online, and one viewer commented, "Thank you for doing this. This is fantastic, as it helps us all follow the candidates on their positions and issues." DRNY worked with the Campaign Finance Board ahead of subsequent debates to ensure that human-produced captioning and ASL would be available during the live debate and in the official debate recording. The Campaign Finance Board also responded to the disabilities community's request to include visual descriptions, as we're doing here, for viewers with blindness and low vision. But they were
sorry to interrupt. We're just over 2 minutes. If you could wrap it up, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. I'll obviously include written as well. And basically just recommendations, making sure that all contracts include at minimum ASL and closed captioning. When providing content in language other than English, also providing closed captioning and audio descriptions. I know the Campaign Finance Board had some fantastic programs in many different languages this year that DRNY was not able to share on our social medias because it didn't have the accessibility component. And as I mentioned at the top, people with disabilities come from every background and still need that accessibility. So thank you all so much, and we look forward to collaborating with Campaign Finance Board in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Helmuth. Does the board have any questions or comments for Ms. Helmuth? Well, thank you very much. We enjoyed working with you, and we look forward to working with you in the future. So now I guess I will give one more shout to see if Mr. Ruiz has joined us.
I do not see him popped on. I also do not see Miss Moses popped on as well. So I think we can jump down there.
Okay, so we will move on to Dave Manny and Hillary Weissman.
Greetings from NBC New York. I'm Dave Manny, Assistant News Director here. I'm joined by Hillary Weissman, our political producer and debate quarterback. Thank you for this opportunity. I am a white, middle-aged guy in a maroon pullover. She is a much younger woman in a maroon short-sleeve shirt. So NBC New York hosted 3 debates this year in partnership with the New York City Campaign Finance Board: the mayoral Democratic primary on June 16th, the comptroller Democratic primary on June 20th, and the mayoral general on October 20th. Our co-sponsors for all 3 debates were the New York Urban League, the Citizens Budget Commission, Politico, and our sister station, Telemundo 47. Despite unprecedented challenges presented by the pandemic and a large field of candidates, we produced 3 debates that were incredibly informative and appropriately entertaining and reached an audience of more than 1.3 million people. To be exact, 1,308,329 viewers watched one of our 3 debates on NBC New York and Telemundo 47 platforms, both TV and digital. Even more tuned in on New York City's TV channel and NBC streaming channels. The numbers break down like this. The general election debate between Mr. Adams and Mr. Sliwa was the most watched, with more than 600,000 viewers. The Democratic primary was second, with nearly 480,000 people tuning in. And there was terrific interest too in the comptroller debate, with well over 200,000 people watching. Total viewership is also impressive when measured by another metric, a comparison to 2013, when NBC New York hosted 3 similar debates. The number of people tuning in this year in a fractured media landscape was 7% higher.
While the ratings were tremendous, and that is how we all measure success in this business, voter education was our #1 goal. That's why we felt particularly good about this review from the New York Times of our first debate, the Democratic primary. Quote, "The 2-hour debate was one of the most substantive of the primary seasons, spanning issues from how the city can combat climate change to the best ways to manage affordable housing and homelessness." As many of you know, getting to that moment, a live in-person debate, was an adventure like none other. It was exactly 1 year ago today that we sat in a conference room here at 30 Rock and pitched the Campaign Finance Board our proposal to host debates. The city was basically still locked down by the pandemic, and none of us knew if in-person debates could be done safely. Our big idea was what we called in-person remote debates. The concept was that each candidate would be in their own tiny studio here in 30 Rock and hooked up live to each other and the moderators. Our engineering team had it all figured out, but we caught a break. COVID rates eased enough for us to have candidates together, but socially distanced. There aren't many studios that can hold 8 candidates 6 feet apart plus 4 moderators, but in this building, Studio 8H, the legendary home of Saturday Night Live, is plenty big. Thankfully, the show was on hiatus and they let us have the space to host the primary debates for mayor and comptroller. We moved to a smaller studio, one used by Jimmy Fallon during the pandemic, for the final debate when we had only 2 candidates. As part of our proposal last December, we also pledged to host community forums with key organizations to hear concerns from different corners of the city, help shape questions for candidates, and educate people about ranked choice voting. We're pleased to report we hosted 5 virtual forums. We started with the Asian community amid a surge in bias attacks. That forum was produced with the Asian American Federation and Apex for Youth. Other forums were done in conjunction with the Citizens Budget Commission, the New York Urban League, and Hispanics groups, including the Dominico American Society. Additionally, Telemundo 47 hosted a Spanish language forum. Each forum included a range of voices from business leaders to parents to students and an explanation of ranked choice voting.
Finally, we also delivered on our promise to educate people about ranked choice voting beyond the forums and debates. NBC New York reporter Melissa Russo's explainer story, which included visuals in an RCV tutorial produced by NYC Votes, aired 3 times on News 4 and was seen by 250,000 people. A version for younger voters produced by Kay Angram was seen by nearly 10,000 people on social media. We also created on-air graphics that were used in newscasts throughout the political season that sent viewers to the best place for more information, voting.nyc. From all of us here at NBC New York, Telemundo 47, our partners, our thanks to the Campaign Finance Board for this opportunity and all the guidance along the way. A special thank you to Matt Solars, who really held our hand and got us through some really tricky situations. Much appreciated. We look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate the work that you did. Does the board have any questions for our panel from NBC? Okay, seeing none, I will move on to the next speaker, who is Tasha Labors. After that, we will have Michael Belzer, Ben Weinberg, and Kathleen Collins. Ms. Labors, you're You okay.
Yeah, sorry. Good morning. My name is Tasha Larabors. I'm a voting access organizer and trainer for the Center for Independence of the Disabled, New York. I'm testifying before you to speak on behalf of the voters and explain 2 of the many crucial issues that the disabled community face. One of them being a ballot marking device. The most common complaint I've heard is that the ballot marking device did not work properly. At this point, the ballot marking devices are starting to age and are not always working properly. A colleague of mine, Michael Ring, a voter with a disability, a poll worker, and a member of the Downstate New York ADAPT's Voter Engagement Working Group, recommends poll workers perform operational checks of the ballot marking devices on the morning of Election Day to make sure the BMDs are working properly and avoid technical difficulties while placing a vote. Another colleague of mine, Monica Bartley, tried to mark her ballot twice with the BMD, but it would not print and the machine was jammed. Although a poll worker tried to fix it, in the end, she had to mark her ballot by hand. Another issue in terms of poll workers. While some voters were fortunate to have a poll worker to help whether they had a question or a concern or when the BMD machine malfunctioned, not all voters were lucky enough to have poll workers who were familiar with the ballot marking device. Another consumer who was blind spoke of his experience when he went to vote and needed to use the ballot marking device, but when he had difficulty with the machine, the poll worker failed to offer aid, leaving him unable to exercise his right to vote. There is the need to educate poll workers about the ballot marking device so that they can better assist voters who need to use this device. No voter should have to return home after a failed voting attempt due to a defective ballot marking device. Everyone deserves the right to vote, even the disabled. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Larabors. Are there any questions or comments from the board? So we will move on to Michael Belzer.
Mr. Belzer is not here, so I
Okay.
think we can jump ahead to Mr. Weinberg.
Okay, we will jump ahead to Mr. Weinberg.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. Good morning. My name is Ben Weinberg, and I am the Director of Public Policy at Citizens Union, an independent and nonpartisan government group dedicated to making democracy work for all New Yorkers. I'm a white man with a beard, black glasses, wearing a gray button-up shirt. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today about the 2021 election cycle. This historic election saw a significant increase in the number of candidates running, a more diverse pool of candidates, and more women and people of color win seats. The reliance on private donations decreased. Overall, the public campaign finance system allowed a broader spectrum of candidates to run for office and produced a more competitive and fair election. Yet there is still room for improvement, especially concerning pay-to-play issues, competitiveness, and the use of public funds. Our written testimony goes into greater detail, but I will briefly mention a few of those issues here. First, to reduce the impact of pay-to-play donations, we believe the city should ban bundling by lobbyists and people who do business with the city and prohibit the use of public funds to pay for consulting services from firms that also lobby. This year, we again saw too many examples of lobbying firms getting involved in campaigns, possibly giving them undue influence with the elected officials they help elect. The city should also prohibit elected officials from soliciting funds from affiliated nonprofits and limit how prominently they are featured in communications. Despite recent reforms, those groups are still used to give elected officials a path around campaign finance and public and conflict of interest laws. To make our elections more fair and competitive, Citizens Union recommends making explicit regulations defining what constitutes as coordination between independent expenditure entities and campaigns, including reference to family members and former staff. Almost every leading mayoral candidate this year had a PAC supporting them, some heavily funded by immediate family members. We must do more to limit the ability to circumvent the program's spending limits. The city should also enact war chest restrictions to limit the transfer of funds by candidates running for another office or re-election. These could become a real burden on the ability of newcomers to challenge the incumbents in 2023, the next election. There are also ways to make more effective use of public funds, and our written testimony includes suggestions on this matter, including research suggestions. In that context, Citizens Union believes the city should consider reducing public funds for candidates facing minimal opposition beyond the requirement to be opposed by one candidate on the ballot. Lastly, for the debate program, we believe rules should require major debates to be held live and in person, absent a declaration of state of emergency that prevents large gatherings. The upsurge of Zoom candidate forums in this cycle has shown the value of traditional live debates. Lastly, Citizens Union would like to stress the importance of maintaining an independent campaign finance board protected from political interference through the budget or otherwise. That is an essential element of our functioning system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weinberg. Are there questions or comments from the board? I will remind everyone who is attending, if you would like to testify, please just put a note in the chat or raise your hand and our staff will add you to the list of testifiers. Again, are there questions for Mr. Weinberg? Seeing none, we will go on to our next group, which is Kathleen Collins, Ian Vanderwalker, and Tom Speaker. When Ms. Collins, when you are promoted, you are, oh, there you are. Just start speaking when you unmute yourself and start speaking.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Kathleen Collins, and I am a co-coordinator for the Voter Engagement Working Group of Downstate New York ADAPT, a grassroots community of people with all types of disabilities advocating for the civil rights of people with disabilities, including but not limited to the right to live and fully participate in the larger community. I reside in Manhattan, and I am a white woman with brown eyes. I'm wearing a shirt with a red shirt with no sleeves, and I'm wearing pink headphones. And I have short reddish brown hair and brown eyes. I'm just going to speak on one topic today. We already submitted written testimony to the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee, and we will probably submit that same testimony here to the New York City Campaign Finance Board. But one other thing I'd like to add today is that we need to allow candidates with a disability to use campaign funds to cover campaign-related expenses incurred that are necessary to place a candidate with a disability on the same playing field as other candidates. For example, a candidate with a manual dexterity disability or print disability should be able to use campaign funds to pay for an assistant to take notes during meetings. Also, a candidate with low vision or who is blind should be able to use campaign funds to pay for an assistant who can provide audio descriptions of places and people and printed materials provided. So too, a candidate with hearing loss or who is deaf should be able to use campaign funds to pay for ASL interpreters, that's American Sign Language interpreters, or for other technology or assistance to help them with communicating with their potential voters. Further, a candidate with the mobility disability should be able to use campaign funds to have a person who can assist them in getting to events, since I don't know if you're aware of, but I'm aware of the fact that Access-a-Ride is very unreliable and will not probably get you to your events on in time. I would like to note that already the campaign funds have been allowed to be used to cover campaign-related childcare expenses, as seen on the federal level, and I'd like to refer you to the New York City Campaign Finance Board's own handbook on page 28. We recognize, of course, that we will probably have to have a law enacted that is in the same way that such a law was enacted to allow candidates with young children to use campaign funds for childcare during their campaign. And we just ask this board to support such proposed legislation, which we hope to have the City Council enact in 2022. That's on our to-do list. As I said before, we have other matters that we will address in our written testimony that we will be submitting within the next 72 hours. And we thank you for your time and for having this hearing that is totally accessible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Collins. Always a pleasure to hear your testimony. Do we have any comments from the board? Okay, so we will go to the next speaker. I just want to point out that after Mr. Vanderwalker and Mr. Speaker, the only person remaining who has signed up, we will go back to the people we skipped, but the only remaining person is Vitaly Filipchenko. But if people who are on this meeting would like to testify, please just put a note in the chat or raise your hand and we will add you to the list. I'm sorry, I forgot who is next. Oh, Mr. Vanderwalker.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Ian Vanderwalker. I'm Senior Counsel with the Democracy Program at the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU School of Law. I'm a white man with dark hair and a dark beard, wearing a gray jacket, and I'm in front of a virtual background of a bookshelf. New York City's system of small donor public financing is the most powerful solution available to counter the corrosive influence of big money in politics. It has empowered candidates to run without relying on big money and has strengthened civic participation and grassroots campaigning. This year, New York City elected the most diverse and representative legislative body in its history. A recent Brennan Center analysis shows that women will increase their representation on the council from 27% to 61%, and people of color will increase their representation on the council from 51% to 67%, and those numbers basically reflect the demographics of the city. One of the factors, of course, that has influenced this outcome is the public financing system. Of the women and people of color who were elected to the city council, 97% participated in the program. Among all competitive candidates in the primary cycle, there was race and gender parity in campaign fundraising, both in terms of the total amount and in terms of how much candidates depended on small donors and the public funds match. This fundraising parity is especially remarkable given the longstanding disadvantages that women and candidates of color face in fundraising as compared to white and male candidates. Well-documented racial and gender wealth gap causes women and candidates of color to fundraise from social and professional networks that are more likely to have lower incomes and lower amounts of accumulated wealth. Women candidates also typically report a lack of party support, which means a lack of access to party fundraising networks, and institutional donors like PACs tend in open races to rely to support male candidates over female candidates, all things being equal. Given all of that and the successes of the 2021 cycle, we just reiterate that the public financing program has powerfully operated to counter systematic disparities according to race and gender in campaign fundraising, and helped our elected leaders here in New York City better represent our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderwalker. Sorry, there's a bit of an echo. Are there questions for Mr. Vanderwalker? Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we have Tom Speaker. After that, we have Dr. Devi. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, so I'm going to leave it off if you don't mind. It's not rude. I think, and after, so what we will promote her to be a speaker, but Mr. Speaker, whenever you are ready.
Good morning to the members and staff of the Campaign Finance Board. My name is Tom Speaker, and I'm a policy analyst for reInvent Albany. I'm white, I'm wearing a blue shirt. I have long, unruly, shaggy hair, and I'm non-binary. reInvent Albany is the government watchdog organization that advocates for open and accountable government. New York City's public campaign finance program, we want to start by saying, is a national model and has been an extraordinary success. As the program has expanded, the city council has become more diverse, and the incoming New York City Council will have a record number of women and people of color. We believe that the program's success has been in large part due to the integrity and independence of the Campaign Finance Board. And that is why we oppose efforts by some members of the City Council to change the CFB's budget process. My written testimony goes into more detail, but I'll just run through shortly the recommendations that we made. We have 5. Our first recommendation is just one for the CFB's rules. That is that the CFB add conversations about fundraising to the definition of coordination between candidate committees and PACs. During this year's mayoral race, there was the issue of candidate Sean Donovan's father, Michael Donovan, being the largest funder for a political action committee. And that was spending millions in support of his son's candidacy. We agree with the CFB's assessment that this did not constitute coordination under the CFB's rules, but we do encourage the CFB to look at revising those rules so this would constitute coordination. As far as legislative recommendations go, we believe that we agree with Citizens Union's recommendation that lobbyists should be prohibited from bundling altogether, as well as from organizing fundraisers for candidates. Our third recommendation is that candidates' family members be subject to doing business contribution limits. There's some evidence that family members constitute a significant amount of candidate fundraising. And we saw instances where major candidates received large donations from family members during this election season. Fourth recommendation is that the City Council limit how much doing business donors can contribute to independent expenditure committees. There was a bill, Intro 1231 by Councilmember Brad Lander, that limited how much doing business donors can contribute to independent expenditure committees. We believe that should be taken up by the council. And finally, we believe that the definition of doing business should be expanded and applied to subcontractors, clients of lobbyists, companies seeking building permits, and those submitting pre-applications to the Department of City Planning. Thank you for allowing me to testify. I welcome any questions you might have.
Are there any questions from the board? Okay, next we will hear from Vitaly Filipchenko. After that, we will hear from Dr. Devi Nampia Paramipal, and then Nesli Suarez. Mr. Filipchenko. Are you still here? Oh, there you are. Okay. You can unmute yourself and start whenever you are ready. Mr. Filipchenko, you need to unmute yourself. Whenever you're ready, whenever you unmute yourself, you can and are ready. Mr. Filipchenko, we are unable to hear you. Are you having trouble unmuting? I think perhaps we'll go to the next speaker while Mr. Filipchenko resolves his technical issues. The next speaker is Dr. Devi Nampia Parapimpal.
Hi, how are you? So I am a woman of color. I ran in the public advocate citywide race. And I wanted to talk about the CFB's role. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but I found that in my race, the CFB played an active role in terms of both hitting the matching funds threshold and ultimately, I think, determining the outcome of the race. So for example, I fundraised approximately $80,000 the week before the voter guide was mailed. And the week after it went out, we could only fundraise approximately $1,000 for our campaign. So the donors and supporters for my campaign began to question whether I was truly committed to the race or whether I was a nominal placeholder candidate. And that is because the voter guide, which was sent to every eligible voter in the city, stated that I didn't submit my profile in time. There was no further explanation, and this led to a domino effect. Since the matching funds determination is directly related to fundraising, I couldn't meet the threshold for matching funds after it was set. And meanwhile, the CFB awarded my opponent, the Democratic incumbent, almost $1 million in taxpayer funds because he met that threshold. So that's irrespective of the fact that I, as a first-time GOP candidate, fundraised more than double what he did in the disclosure period prior to the voter guide being sent. So in terms of this statement that I hadn't met the deadline, I had submitted my profile on the day that it was due, but there were several technical issues with the CFB's portal. These were acknowledged, and the deadline was actually delayed multiple times because of the faulty portal. And subsequently, the CFB acknowledged that there was a problem with the portal and that they had received my submission, but that one term had to be changed. So basically, I had to change the name Jumani Williams to the general term, the current public advocate. If that one term was changed, then my entire candidate profile would have been included in the voter guide. I submitted my revision through the CFB's apparently faulty portal, and I didn't hear anything back for 8 weeks, even though my treasurer and I had several email conversations, extensive Microsoft Zoom meetings with the CFB over the next 8 weeks. In fact, my husband got phone calls from the CFB and Facebook messages and Facebook posts from people at the CFB asking about me, asking about our children, but nobody bothered to say there was any problem with the voter guide or anything with my candidate profile. I find that entire thing extremely strange. Then all of a sudden we find out that it's not going to be included. And during the period that anything could have been changed, it wasn't. But because of that domino effect, all of a sudden we couldn't hit the matching funds profile. Our donors and supporters lost confidence. And one thing led to another. And my opponent suddenly had about $1 million more than I did. So this is not—
Sorry to interrupt. We're a little over 3 minutes. So if you could wrap up shortly, that would be great. Thank you very much.
This is not a nonpartisan method of informing the public. This is actually taking an active role in the election. And this same thing kind of took place, I think, throughout the race in terms of how the debate and other parts of the election played out. but I wanted to let that be known. Thank you for your time.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself. Thank you very much for your testimony. Is there comments or questions from the board?
I think we will certainly want to look into what you've stated in your testimony today. Thank you very much.
Okay. I think we will try and go back to Mr. Filipchenko, who has indicated that he is has fixed his technical issues. No, I think we've lost him. Jordan, do we have Mr. Filipchenko?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
Okay. Hi, my name is Vitaly Filipchenko. I'm an immigrant from Russia. I'm middle-aged Caucasian, brown eyes, gray hair, mustache, and I'm streaming outside this in the Red Hook area. I was elected in election for New York City mayor as independent candidate, immigrant, first wave immigrants. My experience with New York City, I love the state, democracy, true, but when students come in for election, Board of Election providing information not because they wanna, because it's a horrible system. They not give you any kind of information, everything on the website. How are you gonna run an immigrant or whatever? You try to get information, you try to get from a website. I think when you get the contribution fund, you have to pass like 6 hours information. They provided directly information, how they're running contribution. But if you try to run for anyone else, city not provided information. They just ignore it. It sounds like only for rich people to get money. Second old problem, collect the signature for running for any kind of position. This sounds like running for rich people, because I was collecting my signature by myself. I was directly with all these New Yorkers. Doesn't matter where you're located, where you live. I was visiting all these boroughs, Staten Island, Brooklyn, Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and I talked to the people to get the signatures. Election provided, if you're running, they can get running boys who get paid to collect the signature. I think we have to change the system. If you want to really help New Yorkers, you have to be on the street and collect a signature by yourself. That's really true love for New Yorkers. Second of all, matching fund for contribution. It's not democracy, it's a business money making. Because real democracy, each one candidate have to get same amount of money. And it's like not like a fund or any kind of super PAC. No, same amount of money. Plus, you got same time limit for each one use. Because I was marginalized for any kind of station in New York. All Russia, all the station, all this famous station got interview for free, got time for interview for each one station. They contact me, they were so proud, oh, it's democracy work in New York, and candidate for New York City mayors who's immigrant who tried to approve the democracy. New York was ignoring me completely. I would submit so many information, all CCTV station, all this news. Thank you, CEO and his command. He's really helped me with my form, with my connection to the people who can help me give information for the people. Board of Election, horrible job. Matching fund 200,000. Where is this coming numbers from? 200,000. It's real democracy. Don't beg it from money from people who was desperate in the COVID-19, who losing the jobs. And all these big candidates like Eric Adams got millions. Excuse me, he got millions from who? From regular people? No. I think we have to get normalized real democracy. Everybody have to get equal rights, and they have to be consistently watching information how they provide it. That's my opinion. I have to get like not re-elected, because problem with this, all this station, board election, CFB.
Sorry
CFB
to interrupt. If you could just wrap up, we're just a little over 3 minutes. That'd be great.
Okay,
Thank you
wrap
very
it
much.
up.
Thank you.
If you want to get a really true democracy, you have to fix your problem. Border election is CFB, because these numbers outrageous. And I'm support democracy, but not money maker. Thank you so much, Vitaly Filipchenko, independent candidate.
Thank you very much, Mr. Filipchenko. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, we will move on to our next speaker, who is Nasli Suarez. After that, we have Shirley Chen, who, other than the people that we'll go back to after that, who've already, these will be the last person to testify. So Ms. Suarez, if you can unmute yourself and start testifying when you're ready.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Nasli Suarez. I worked on Dr. Debbie's campaign, and I also worked in her medical practice treating patients during COVID. I just wanted to add to Dr. Debbie's testimony. I was heavily involved in her debate prep, and Dr. Debbie and I had worked rigorously for weeks trying to meet the debate threshold. And after we managed to fundraise the money that we needed to get a mandatory debate, the CFB then declared the debate voluntary, meaning that Dr. Debbie's opponent, who had spent the majority of his campaign ignoring Dr. Debbie and not giving her any airtime, he had the option to not show up to the debate, which was not only dismissive to Dr. Debbie's efforts to get the mandatory debate, but also giving a leg up to her opponent. Once we were given the debate, it was chosen to be at the New York One studio, where, as you saw, the mayoral candidates had 2 debates on larger networks, which has a larger audience and can reach more New Yorkers. But we were forced to go to New York One, which not all New Yorkers have access to. So that limited Dr. Debbie's audience once again. When we contacted the CFB and New York One, we asked them if they could promote Dr. Debbie's debate, maybe run some ads to let whoever watches New York One know that there's going to be a public advocate debate, but we never heard anything back. After the debate, we also asked for footage of the debate so that we can publish it ourselves and maybe try to get some airtime, but we were also ignored and we never heard back. So I think time and time again, the CFB goes out of its way to manipulate candidates in their campaign and to interfere in election results. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm here, but thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Suarez. Are there any questions? So we will move on to Shirley Chen. Ms. Chen, when you are ready, if you could unmute yourself and start testifying.
Yes, hello. Oh,
Yes.
hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Shirley Chen. I am Asian. I wear black glasses and also wear a white sweater. So I also worked with Dr. Debbie Namparempo as per her medical practice throughout the pandemic. And I also helped with her during her campaign election because she's running as a public candidate under the Republican Party. And I also just want to address some of the additional issues that we face with the Campaign Finance Board. So Dr. Debbie, she submitted her profile for the voter guide through their portal. However, it was deleted just because the CFB said she did not submit it on time, but due to their own technical issues, she was not able, it did not accept her submission and was not part of the official voter guide. And she also faced other additional issues, such as her information was not publicly viewed, and therefore it made a lot of the voters having issue to search her up online, while other candidates had their information on the website and as well having tags associated with their profile. And Dio Chino, who had spoke earlier today, he serves as a consultant for Dr. Debbie campaign. And he also was a candidate for public advocate, and he also faced similar issue earlier on. However, CFB actually personally contacted them through phone and email to try to resolve this issue. However, for Dr. Debbie's case, that never occurred, and she had to face all these struggles on her own. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chen. Are there any questions from the board? So I think we will go back to people to see if people who we had called earlier in the hearing to see if they are now here. Cesar Ruiz, I'm sorry, June Moses, Michael Belzer are the three people that we had skipped. Are any of them here now?
Does not appear so.
I will give one last call to people who are attending to see if anyone else would like to testify. Seeing none, does any of the board want to make any last last comments? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I just got a message that we are waiting for a Councilmember Ben Kalos is going to log on now and testify. He would like to testify. So it will take a second for him to log on. And once he is here, we will hear from him.
Is that 1 minute?
Okay. While we're waiting, I'll just thank the staff for all of their hard work in putting this hearing together and coordinating, and thank our ASL interpreters who do such a great job at all of these hearings.
And in addition, of course, we'd like to thank everyone who has testified today. We appreciate your coming out and sharing your thoughts and experiences with us, and we will certainly take them into account as we proceed with our post-election work and ultimately our report.
Amy, you have one raised hand among the attendees. Terrence Page.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to promote Terrence for a second. Terrence, if you have something to say, we can hear from you.
Okay, great.
Whenever you're ready, Terrence. I see he just joined as a panelist.
Okay. Okay, so Terrence Page, whenever you are ready. So whenever you unmute yourself, you can start, Mr. Page.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Terrence Page. I am the president of the Greater New York Council of the Blind. I'd like to compliment the Campaign Finance Board for its efforts to reach out to the disability community with its efforts to improve the video guide and its efforts to do much more work. I have worked with the CFB, me and Kathleen Collins, who previously spoke, and they have done excellent work at reaching out to our community in Braille, large print, audio description, closed caption, and all those features. And I want to thank them for that and their continued work. And I will continue to work with them to make accessibility not only a priority, but a gift, because information leads to clear and open democracy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any comments from the board about Mr. Page's comment or any other comments?
Is there any further word from Mr. Kalos?
Not yet, no. I let him know that we're in the hearing and he has an opportunity, but that we are getting close to the end. So if we have no one else to hear from, I think we can go ahead.
Has he submitted any written testimony?
He has been encouraged to, and I anticipate that he will take us up on that.
Do we want to just give him like 1 minute more?
Yeah, sure. Give him a couple of minutes. Does somebody have his cell to call up to see how far he is away?
Putting in a quick call now.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Eric.
All right, Councilman Kalos will be logging on in just a minute. So I just spoke with him.
He just joined, promoting him now.
Okay, Councilmember Callis, whenever you unmute yourself, you can speak. We're ready for you.
Thank you to Amy, Executive Director, Eric Friedman, and the entire Campaign Finance Board. I'm Councilmember Ben Kalos, and I literally ran for office just because I wanted to see improvements to the New York City campaign finance system. Particularly, I wanted to get all the big money out with a full public matching system. And I believe that the Campaign Finance Board did an incredible job in executing that new system in the 2021 cycle. And I want to thank you for it. As we saw in the election, I don't know that it changed outcomes yet. We still saw large political action committees like the Real Estate Board of New York have a decisive role in certain city council races. But at the same time, we saw a number of people win under the Democratic Socialist line. And ultimately, what I think the new system has changed is who gets to run for office. And I think I look forward to the report that will come out of the 2021 cycle to see if we saw more women running, more people of color. But one thing we did see following this process is more women in the city council. It's a majority for the first time, and more people of color so that our council is finally more representative. And we also saw a change in where the money came from. We saw a number of candidates follow a pledge that I had started back in 2013 not to take money from real estate. And so I think that changed. Also, in the past 8 years, we passed laws around not matching money from lobbyists and bundlers, particularly lobbyists who were bundling. And I think that also changed it. So overall, I'm optimistic to see what this next city council has to bring to the table. Another key piece was we changed what it looked like to run for a higher office. It was always a small gap. Running for city council, it was sometimes a gap of about $100,000. But when you got to mayor, it was a gap of several $1,000,000. And I remember when we were passing this system, there was objections from existing citywide elected officials who felt that it was a problem for new people to be able to run. And what we saw through the election is insurgent candidates coming in, whether it was Andrew Yang, Catherine Garcia, or even Maya Wiley, who were able to use a 8 match on the first 250 to run competitive campaigns and almost win. And I don't even believe Garcia, I'm not even sure if Wiley was in the race when we changed the rules. And I think this really allowed more people to be able to run. And I think that was a good thing, given just how close some of these people came, which indicates that they were actually viable. Something that I would recommend that I was disappointed about is that I believe that if somebody makes qualification for matching, they should automatically get on the ballot. I think that during a pandemic, people should not have had to risk their lives to get on the ballot. I think that is something incredibly important. One recommendation I'd like to share is, whether you like it or not, people judge a candidate's viability based on their fundraising. And the current way in which the Campaign Finance Board reports the numbers in the summaries highlights the grand total fundraising. And I prefer a system, and so by highlighting the grand total, that rewards candidates who are taking as much big money as possible. And what I will say is, as an insurgent candidate, I ran on 10s and 20s. When I ran for borough president, I also ran on 10s and 20s, but it is much easier as an incumbent, as a council member, as a whatever elected official, to sit down with people and ask for max checks. We've changed that max from 5,000 to 2,000, but it is easier for an elected official to get two $2,000 checks from whoever they're talking about, from them and their spouse. Sometimes they may even get lucky and get money from adult children. And so one meeting could lead to $10,000. And the system that we wrote, that we passed, allows somebody to run on only small dollars. And so the issue is that when people report the summary, it shows how much somebody has raised. So in my race, I believe I raised the most public funds, but I raised some of the least money. And that's because other people raised 800,000, 600. I raised exactly 375,000 because it's exactly what I needed to get my full public match. plus.
Councilmember, if I could just have you wrap up shortly, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So what I would say is if you can please report the number in terms of the matchable amount raised and the amount over the match and how much would have to be repaid, so that people can see that even two candidates who've raised at different amounts of money, that when you account for the public match, it comes in for different numbers. Another piece is I raised more public funds than any other candidate for borough president in the city. And I think I came 100,000 short of maxing out. I think that the number should be increased from 175 to 250. And I think last but not least, the voter guide was much more consolidated and had even fewer districts. Something that I would really love to see is people just getting a voter guide for their district only, so they're not getting confused by other council races. I want to thank all of you for running an amazing system. And I think just the last piece is incumbents in multiple races use their government resources to help their campaigns, and there was no enforcement of that. And people should not be able to use their social media and government resources to amplify their campaigns. We didn't, but others did. And I think seeing that enforced would also be important. So just from the top, great job. We have a much more diverse council. Key recommendations: change the way you represent the money that people raise, increase the match on borough-wide races from 175 to 250, and better enforce rules around social media and use of government resources by elected officials. Thank you for having me here today.
Thank you very much. And thank you for your partnership over these years. Does the board or anyone have any comments or questions for the council member? Okay, seeing none, I believe that we have reached the end of the hearing. Jordan, do we have anyone else who's asked? No, I see
Nope,
none.
that's it.
Do we have any final comments from any of the board members? So again, I'll echo the chair's thanks to everyone who testified. Thank you for your suggestions and comments, and we will certainly be looking at them both in changes to, recommended changes to the law, changes to our rules, and changes to our operating procedures. Again, if people want to provide written testimony, you can send it via email to Jordan Pantalone at Pantalone, PANTALONE at nyccfb.info. Again, that's written in the chat if you want to see that email address again. And thank you from everyone at the CFB. Thank you everyone for participating in this hearing.